August 27, 2024. Kursk, Russia. Midnight erupted without warning. 50 Ukrainian drones slashed through the sky, screaming past radar, swarming a bunker Moscow had sworn was untouchable. Concrete split, fuel caches detonated, and Shahed drones cooked off in a chain reaction that lit the horizon for 20 kilometers. Locals filmed in panic. Telegram flooded with fireballs before sensors could react. In minutes, Russia's so-called drone empire was burning. But this was no ordinary strike. Kyiv hadn't just drawn blood. They had cracked open the heart of Russia's shadow war. What exactly burned beneath the earth that night? And did Ukraine just change the entire course of this war? Background: why this happens. The city went dark again. Sirens howled as Shahed drones slammed into the grid. Hospitals flickered, doctors scrambled. Premature babies clung to life on fading generators. Families huddled in basements, boiling water over flames while the cold crept in. Dozens never made it through the night. The drones were cheap, fast, relentless. But they weren't acting alone. Somewhere in Russia, an invisible hand was guiding them, turning every swarm into terror. Just after dawn, Ukrainian drones descended like a storm. Their target: a logistics hub feeding the Shahed program. Explosions tore through fuel depots and launch racks, killing operators and torching supplies.
The Ukrainian drone attack, Russian officials later said, an alleged Ukrainian strike had killed civilians.
For a moment, it looked like Kyiv had cut the chain, but by noon, new swarms were already lifting off from other bases. Russia's drone war didn't pause. It adapted. Ukraine realized it wasn't enough to hit the launchers. The true nerve had to be found, the brain behind the swarms. Satellite eyes spotted something unusual: a hardened underground complex, fresh construction, disguised antennas, convoys of trucks moving in strange, repeated patterns. At first, it looked like another depot, but intercepted chatter told a darker truth. Kursk wasn't storage, it was command. Every blackout in Odessa, every swarm over Kyiv, every Shahed that droned overhead, its orders came from here. Blackouts rolled on. Children cried in shelters. Mothers cursed the dark. And every drone above carried the shadow of Kursk. The question was no longer if Ukraine would strike back, but when. Inside a dim command room, officers gathered around maps dotted with pins. Bryansk, Belgorod, Kursk. Smaller depots had fallen, but the machine kept running. Now the target was different. The command itself, buried deep in concrete and guarded by walls, radars, and men. The plan was dangerous, riskier than anything before. But if Kursk could be silenced, Russia's drone empire might finally collapse. The first movement: confrontation. Searchlights snapped on. Beams clawed through the darkness. S-300 batteries swiveled. Machine guns spat fire. White tracers arced overhead like fireworks gone mad. Villagers whispered of shooting stars, only to flinch as explosions shredded fuel depots at the perimeter. A relay tower toppled. Radar posts sparked. Underground, alarms screamed inside the Kursk bunker. Panic rippled through reinforced halls. The probe had begun. But was the fortress truly shaken, or just stirred? Drones weaved in patterns designed to bait responses. Operators in the bunker fired radar sweeps, triggering countermeasures. Every missile launched, every radar flash recorded by Ukraine's observer drones, which fed live data back to Kyiv. Thermal imaging, EM signals, heat signatures, and turret rotations, all cataloged and mapped. Smoke from burning depots drifted into the night, masking the drone's approach. Operators didn't know they were revealing their own positions. Every defensive reaction became a clue. Every exposed angle was logged. Each second brought Kyiv closer. Each alarm sounded like a marker on an invisible map. But where exactly was the brain behind the swarm? A secondary wave approached. Decoy drones led, strikers followed. Explosions rocked storage areas, igniting old munitions. Concrete shuddered under the blasts. Smoke and sparks lit the tree line. Soldiers shouted orders. Tracers burned out. From the sky, Ukrainian operators observed. Generator vents venting heat, unusual electrical surges, patterns of movement in guarded corridors. Signals intercepted from radios and internal communications suggested a central hub, somewhere deep, shielded, reinforced. The bunker was hiding something, and Ukraine was beginning to see its shadow. Night stretched on. Waves of drones probed every edge of the base, mapping fire, decoding radar bursts, cataloging every response. It was chaos above ground, but intelligence below grew in precision. Patterns emerged. Heat signatures converged. EM readings formed a map invisible to the naked eye. For the first time, Ukrainian commanders could pinpoint anomalies. Underground shafts venting heat. redundant communications lines, reinforced walls unlike any storage depot. They were tracing the heartbeat of Kursk itself. The fortress wasn't invincible. Its secrets were coming into focus, but Kyiv would need patience and a second, more devastating strike to finish the hunt. 1 month later, under the cover of darkness, Ukraine would strike again.
And more investments in interceptor drones, air defense systems, and of course missiles.
And this time, Kursk would never forget. The big battle, August 27, 2024, 02:14 a.m. Breach begins. 50 Ukrainian drones tore across the black sky, buzzing low like insects over the tree line. The first wave hit the eastern perimeter. Decoys drew fire from Panzer systems while strikers darted between radar sweeps. Tracers seared the air, sending molten streaks into nearby fields. Local farmers, still awake, captured the chaos on shaky phones, whispering, "It's raining fire." Inside the bunker, Sergeant Ivanov of the 12th Engineer Battalion jumped from his bunk. Alarms screamed, red lights flashed, and the metallic stench of smoke filled the hallways. For the first time, Kursk's walls trembled under real pressure. The fortress had been rattled, but the heart was still hidden. Above ground, observer drones hovered 500 meters out, cameras streaming infrared and thermal data back to Kyiv. Operators traced patterns, vent shafts venting heat, patrol rotations, EM pulses from communication hubs. Every defensive response became a clue. Every burst of tracer fire revealed angles, weak points, and secret corridors. Decoys swooped low. Strikers followed, targeting generator rooms and ammo depots. A fire ignited in a fuel truck near the southern wall, painting the bunker in orange and black smoke. Explosions reverberated, shaking the reinforced concrete. Kyiv could see the bunker's skeleton, but could they collapse it completely? Several drones dove straight into the main entrance, warheads tearing through decades of concrete. Others penetrated ventilation shafts, igniting control rooms and racks of Shahed drones stored underground. Soldiers shouted, trying to seal doors and reroute power, but smoke and fire consumed every corridor. Secondary blasts erupted in sequence. Stacks of munitions cooked off, fuel barrels detonated, and electronics fried. Heat waves rippled out, melting wiring and scorching floors. From the outskirts, the horizon glowed red, while distant villages felt vibrations as if an earthquake had struck. The bunker's defenses were crumbling, but what remained intact inside the labyrinth? Then came the blast, a thunderous roar, far larger than anything seen before in the border war, ripped through Kursk. The ground buckled. Smoke billowed skyward in a column glowing red at its base. Observers in Moscow froze. Military channels went silent. Analysts scrambled to interpret the destruction.
Kursk region of Russia as a rare cross-border attack by Ukrainian troops continued on Wednesday.
Ukraine had delivered its boldest strike yet, but questions remained. How much of the command infrastructure survived? Which Shahed swarms had been destroyed, and which were just delayed? The world woke to Kursk burning, but the real shock was still to come. Turning point. Result. The first light of day revealed a landscape scorched and shattered. Satellite eyes hovered silently overhead, recording the jagged craters where fortified structures had once stood. Roofs caved, entrances buried under tons of rubble. Blackened scars clawed across the fields, evidence of an inferno that no Moscow statement could erase. Smoke still rose in thin columns. Fire crews scuttled like ants. Armored vehicles groaned under loads of debris, and Telegram buzzed with shocked voices. "Something massive just went up," typed one local. Another added, "Did anyone survive?" The fortress had fallen. But how deep did the wound reach? The Kremlin stayed quiet. A thin statement about drone activity repelled in Kursk, barely masking the truth. Silence can speak louder than words. Analysts watched as the smoke blurred webcams from towns miles away. The scene was chaotic, yet revealing. Open-source intelligence groups poured over before and after satellite imagery. Patterns emerged. Heat signatures from destroyed Shahed racks, collapsed fuel storage, severed communication lines. The nerve center, the brain of Russia's drone war, was gone. Confirmation trickled in from Washington. Operations in Western Russia had been significantly degraded. But Ukraine knew this was just the first pulse of a larger heartbeat. What other veins of the machine had survived underground? In Kyiv, a quiet pride filled the command centers. Operation Spiderweb was no longer secret.
Ukraine called it Operation Spiderweb. It claimed over 100 drone attacks on military targets across Russia.
Maps displayed on dim monitors, red lines tracing the flow of drones, the network now torn open. Carefully edited clips of observer drones racing over tree lines, Cameras locked on radar arrays before going black were released. The message was precise. Russia's aerial terror could bleed. Streets in Kyiv, Odessa, Lviv felt it immediately. Nights that once rang with sirens fell eerily silent. Shahed launches, once a relentless storm, dropped sharply. Analysts in Europe noticed the pattern. Stockpiles existed, but the assembly lines and distribution hubs had been shattered. The machine had stuttered. Could this lull last, or was it merely a pause before a deeper storm? Within Russia, uncertainty gnawed. Hardline bloggers raged against the Kremlin's silence. Blurry fireball photos flooded social media. Questions multiplied. Why was Kursk so exposed? How had drones slipped past layered defenses? The silence from official channels became a signal itself. Something bigger had been lost. Meanwhile, European analysts whispered in conference rooms. Ukraine had pierced the interior, struck at the roots, and revealed a vulnerability Moscow never expected. But would Moscow respond? And if so, would it be drones, missiles, or something far deadlier? For Ukraine, Kursk was more than a victory. It was proof that the war could reach into Russia's heart, that distance could be bridged with precision, and that ingenuity could cut the tendrils of terror at their source. For the first time, an officer said, Moscow's drone empire had been cut at its roots, yet the smoke still rose, the craters still smoldered, and the questions hung over every briefing room. In Kyiv, in Washington, in Berlin. How deep did the damage run? How long before Moscow struck back? And when it did, would the war itself escalate beyond anyone's reckoning? The battlefield had shifted, but the next move, deadly, decisive, unavoidable, was still waiting in the shadows. Reflection and consequences. Smoke still lingered over Kursk, curling into the sky like gray ghosts. The scars were unmistakable. Craters where fortified structures had once stood, roofs collapsed, blackened earth stretching across the fields. From orbit, the city looked like a war zone carved into the map of Russia, and Ukraine had left its mark. The numbers were staggering. Over 1,000 Shahed drones destroyed, 50 armored launch trucks reduced to twisted steel, ammunition caches detonated in chain reactions, obliterating warehouses that had stored enough UAVs to rain terror for months. Estimates suggested at least 120 soldiers killed, dozens more wounded, and electronic command systems, worth billions, completely fried. The nerve center of Russia's drone war lay in ruins. For months, Shahed drones had rained down on Kyiv, Odessa, Lviv. Sirens screamed nightly. Shelters swelled with trembling civilians. Engines droned overhead. Cheap, relentless, unstoppable. And yet now, Ukraine had done the impossible, slicing into the very heart of Moscow's drone machine, striking a command complex more than 300 kilometers inside enemy lines. Range, intelligence, precision. Ukraine had them all. Bryansk, Belgorod, Kursk, once untouchable, now lay exposed, vulnerable. Locals uploaded shaky phone footage. Voices trembled as fireballs lit the horizon. Children clung to mothers. Fathers cursed into the smoke. It felt like the end of the world, one said. The war was no longer distant thunder. It had arrived, tangible, unavoidable. Globally, the strike rippled through corridors of power. Washington remained silent publicly. Privately, officials confirmed the target had been real. A hardened UAV hub erased from the map. NATO analysts whispered, a turning point in the drone war. Allies who had feared Ukraine fought blind now saw the stockpile itself burn. The network faltered. The machine stuttered. Kyiv celebrated quietly. Operation Spiderweb had succeeded. Maps glowed red with severed connections. Cryptic words from Defense Minister Rustem Umerov appeared online. Every web has a center. Cut it, and the whole structure collapses. Nights were quieter. Shahed engines no longer screamed overhead. For the first time in months, Odessa slept. Hope flickered, but the shadow remained. Moscow's silence was heavy. Military bloggers raged. Calls for missiles, deeper cooperation with Iran, new suppliers. Escalation was inevitable. Every victory exacts a price. Every breakthrough is a risk. Ukraine had bled the heart of Moscow's drone empire, but it had also drawn a new line in the sand. The Kursk strike was more than destruction. It was a warning, a prelude, a message.
Nuclear watchdog IAEA has reacted to reports of fire at the Russian nuclear power plant after a Ukrainian drone attack.
The rules of war had shifted, and in this shadow war, no city, no command center, no soldier, no civilian, Kyiv, Moscow, Kursk, was truly safe. Operation Spiderweb was more than just another headline. In one daring strike, Ukraine pierced deep into Russian territory and leveled a hidden drone command bunker near Kursk. What began as a coordinated swarm of drones ended with fireballs lighting up the night sky, collapsing structures, and a stunned silence from Moscow. But wars don't end with one explosion. This strike shifted momentum, yes, but it also raised the risks. Escalation looms, retaliation is certain, and every move sets the stage for the next. One strike changed everything. But in this war, every blow only raises the stakes. If you want to follow how this drone war unfolds, join us for the next chapter by subscribing to our channel.